church early. He finds out that there's no noise. If there's construction, there's noise, right? Well, finally, he got up out of his office and he goes over to the sanctuary and he opens the door. And there are a dozen men working. Oh, have you ever been in a construction site? Okay. It is noisy, and they've got radios playing, and they've got all kinds of people talking and yelling. And here it's all silent. And then just work going about their business. And he saw that the work would indeed be done as promised. He goes over to the supervisor and asks him, "This is not common to me." And the supervisor said, "Well, most of my crew are Christians. And they attend churches. Most of them go to churches, the modern church, where it's a big studio, like a basketball court. You put the chairs out, and then on Saturday there was a basketball game or whatever, and they served a meal. It's more like our Family Life Center, except without the nice beauty that it is now. You can actually be quiet in one portion, that everybody can be quiet or loud, and nobody else hears you. It's really lovely. But these men appreciated, when as soon as they walked in here and saw this mess, they appreciated it, what it had been, and it was their job to make it what it was again. So he himself, the pastor, the writer here, developed a new feeling for the holiness of his own church. Okay? Holiness of a place. When I started to figure out where I would go from this point, I started to see, well, how many other holy places are there in Scripture? How many places are we told to take our shoes off because we're in holy ground? You know how many? 3. The first one we just read. The second one came from Stephen. It's written in Acts 7, and it's his recitation of the history of Israel. And he does this, recites almost the whole thing. And he ends up telling them that that's what God had told them. Take off your shoes, you're on holy ground. So that's the second one. The third one, I'm not going to tell you about it first, because I think I'd like to do a little background, if you don't mind. And we talk about another scripture that I found while I was doing this, and it talks about keep your camp holy. What does that mean? Keep your camp holy. Remember, we're talking about a time right after Moses. When, by the way, that's in Deuteronomy 23. You'll find that, and we'll go and read that one verse in Deuteronomy 23, which is very interesting. 2 which are just kind of lead up to it, and that's all we're going to read. But I'd like you to think about what it was like to be in the camp of the Israelites on the Exodus. Remember, they followed the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant was kept in a place called the Holy of Holies when they were in camp. The Holy of Holies was inside of a large fence, which is, we call it the hole of the tabernacle. And let's consider that as a big rectangle, and up at the top of it is the Holy of Holies. And by the way, I suggest you go up to the top of the mountain and look down, because I want you to look down on this. And what you'll see is the rectangle. You won't see yes you can, you'll still see the tabernacle, because you'll see the Holy of Holies, because it has a ceiling in it. It's a tent, but the other part is open to you looking down from the mountain. If they have already made their camp, you would find 3 tribes of Israel at the top of the rectangle, 3 tribes on each side, 3 tribes at the bottom. And now you can see that is a big cross. God's speaking to us from way back there in Exodus, or in this case, Deuteronomy. The camp was everything. They moved it. And have you ever been in the military and you had to move a base? And if you ever watched a MASH unit on television, they tear it down and move it someplace and throw it up. And they did this every time that God decided that they were going to move from one place to another. And they followed the smoke in the daytime. And you said they also had fire to follow them, but thinking about the fire, I don't think they walked too much at night, I wouldn't imagine. But they were both there. They served a purpose. And when they were parked and the camp was existent, they had the light of the fire at night. But at any rate, that's the setting for Deuteronomy 23. Go to Deuteronomy 23, if you can find it, or remember it. You find that the first 11 verses of that chapter talk about who can belong to the congregation. Now the congregation is all those people living around the outside of the tabernacle. And think about it, you have individuals, you have families, you have tribes, and you have the whole. The whole is a nation, a people, a nation. So when God talks about the camp being holy, he's talking about each one of these entities being holy, because it's all got to be holy, or it's not got to be holy, if you will. It's got to be the whole way. Well, anyway, the first 11 verses says who can and who cannot be a part of the congregation. The next two verses are interesting because it tells about God making plans for his people. Think about 2.5 million people in that camp. Now, if you went out on camping and you took your RV, the first thing you did when you pulled into the RV park, you found out where the what was. The showers and the restrooms, right? Okay? Well, God knew that these people didn't have that benefit. So now they could go back to the guys who were in the army. You'll remember this. Verse 12 says, thou shalt have a place also outside the camp, whither thou shalt go forth abroad. Okay, he's saying that's where you're going to go to relieve yourself. And my King James says, and thou shalt have a paddle upon the end of your weapon. So the spear would have a point on one end and a paddle on the other. What's a paddle for? He said that when thou wilt ease thyself abroad, thou shalt dig therewith, and shall turn back and cover that which cometh from thee. So he was concerned about their hygiene. Right? That's one type of cleanliness, was it not? Yes. Okay. And now the next verse, which is really why I brought you here. For the Lord thy God walketh through the midst of thy camp. Theirs and ours, I think. And his purpose is to deliver thee and to give up thine enemies before thee. Therefore shall thy camp be holy, that he see no unclean thing in thee, and turn away from thee. No unclean thing. Okay, quickly, because of time, we're going to go to Joshua. We're going to go into the promised land. You know, it's easier than it was the last time I had tried to do this, when I was surprised and found out that you couldn't move up here. You can now. But over here is a map of what it was like. Here we have the Mediterranean Sea, and just right here is that little river, the River Jordan. And they're going to cross over, and they're just going to take over just this little part. It's almost going to be theirs. When God promised it to Abraham, he promised him all of this. And there's reason they're not going to have all of that now. But I want you to be aware that the story's bigger than what we're doing here. And it would have been bigger if they had obeyed him initially. Now they're going to have to go into the promised land, and they are going to have to take it. He had offered it to them. He was going to chase everybody out. He said, slowly, but now they're going to have to take it. So we go to Joshua, the man who's going to lead them into it, and he's led them over the Jordan at this point. And he said to them, things we have to do. They had to do a couple of things when they were ready to go over. But when they went over, by the way, remember what happened? What did God do to the Jordan River? He parted it. Can you imagine what the stories of that got around, they didn't have television, they didn't have radio, they didn't have telephones. But it says in Scripture that the people all the way to the Red Sea, to the Mediterranean Sea, the Mediterranean, and the people, they were the Canaanites, and the Amorites, which were on the west bank of the Jordan, everybody in between was filled with fear. Because here you got 2.5 million people coming into our neighborhood, and they've got a God that can open the waters. So they were afraid, and God promised them that originally. They would be filled with fear, and they were. All right? So now you're part of the Israelites. You got over there. You're on that side of the river. Joshua had to do some things to clean them up. He had to clean them up, make them sanctified by how? All of the men, none of the men had been circumcised except for Caleb and Joshua. He had to circumcise the whole crew. So then they had to rest a few days. And God there's a verse in there, and if I were to read all of these, we won't get out of here. I won't be done with the time I've been assigned. So, but you can read them. In fact, I would recommend you read Joshua 5 through 8, I think, at least through the second verse of 8. You have a good feeling for what happened there. So he had the circumcision. Then they had the feast of the Passover on the 14th day of the month. After that, they ate the fruit of the land, Canaan. You know what happened next? For 40 years, what have they been eating in the morning? Guess what doesn't happen anymore? And they didn't have to plant the corn, they didn't have to harvest it. They ate the fruit of Canaan, just like God had promised. And no more manna. Okay. Now we get to the third time that you hear the words that we're talking about, take off your shoes. Yep. Now to chapter 5, verse 13. And it came to pass, when Joshua was by Jericho, that he lifted up his eyes, and behold, there stood a man against him, with his sword drawn in his hand. And Joshua went unto him and said unto him, Art thou for us, or art thou for our adversary? And he with the sword said, Nay, but as captain of the host of the Lord am I now come. And Joshua fell on his face to the earth, because he knew what he was talking to. He knew what he was listening to. So he did start to worship. He said unto him, And what saith my Lord unto thy servant? The captain of the Lord's host said unto Joshua, Loose thy shoe off your feet, and place thereon, the place thereon thou standest is holy. And Joshua did so. God says that places are holy. There are other places that we meet God in Scripture, but never just only those four that he really talks about as holy, except for his holy mountain. Where's the holy mountain? Where do we read about the holy mountain? Where Moses met God. Where do we go to Sinai? God's holy mountain, where the law was given. Where's the mount? Temple Mount. Okay? But it's any of these places is holy for one reason. And some of you have said it before. It is the presence of God that makes land, makes places, makes people holy. But you notice in most of those places, when God was gone, it wasn't holy anymore. The place wasn't holy. So I suggest to you there are a lot of lessons about that camp. Camp can be me, my family, a tribe, the whole nation, and that includes the church, by the way, that's in there. Every one of them is called to be holy, because we are called to be a holy people. I suggest you have time to read, as I say, Joshua 5, 6, 7, and those first couple of verses in 8. You'll find out why we have to be holy. Because they went in, they went to Jericho, they fought a great battle. Why? Because God tore the walls down, had a great victory. Then they went to another city the next day. What happened to them? They lost 36 men who killed. They were chased by the people. And the reason for it is the camp was not holy. And if you read, you'll find out what made it unholy, what made it unclean, rather, which made it, God saw it as unclean, therefore unholy. God punished. God changed his people. He took care of all the discipline. And at the end, you've got to read those first 2 verses in chapter 8. Because now it's all over, the bad stuff is over, and God said, we're back together again. And I will lead you now. But only because he had rectified the situation about them not being holy. Thank you, folks. I know you get more business to take care of, so. Or is it you? I don't know. I know it's somebody going to come up and talk.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Louise. Are there any announcements? Oh, thank the Lord for sunshine. Oh, my goodness. Oh. Gloom and cold and damp. So, any announcements this morning? Let's keep our world in our prayers this week. A lot of sick people out there, and hopefully they'll get a handle on it and we'll be done with it. But right now, it doesn't look real great. So, let's see. I'm sure Pat has been downstairs busy selling tickets.
Well, we've been passing out a lot of papers, but
Oh.
we have a lot of promises, so.
Oh, okay.
I think we should remember Haley, her brother's memorial was yesterday.
Yes.
I mean, who?
Haley
Jones.
Oh. Oh.
The service was yesterday.
Yes.
All right. Had he been sick for some time? Or?
Yeah, very sudden.
Yeah.
But an acute.
A very rare disease
Really?
popped up.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Anyway, Mixed Bouquet is coming up very soon.
22nd.
And, yeah, the 25th, and
22nd.
so 22nd. Yes, Saturday, the 22nd of February is Mixed Bouquet. Invite your friends, invite your neighbors. A good way to say thank you to somebody who's done something special. And it will be fun. Go out and buy your dress for the 20s. I don't know what kind of shoes to wear. I don't know what kind of shoes they wore in the 20s. But anyway, it will be a fun event.
You have to dress in the 20s to come.
I'm sorry.
No, you don't have to.
No, you don't have to. If you've got something in your closet that resembles the 20s, put it on. And
We'll
wear-
put a feather in your hair and you'll be dressed.
Yeah, you'll be fine. You'll be fine.
Wear pearls.
And a long necklace, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, long pearls.
It's very optional. We just want you there.
Yeah.
And you men, we're speaking to you too. You can buy your sweetheart a ticket for Valentine's Day
There you go.
to a lovely party.
We did get a thank you note from the ranch for our gift certificates at Christmas time. Okay, Bill, you want to leave us laughing?
I'll try. I'd like to welcome back Aida.
Yes.
Good to have you back. One day, a man decided to retire. He booked himself on a Caribbean cruise and proceeded to have the time of his life. That is, until the ship sank. He soon found himself on an island with no other people, no supplies, nothing, only bananas and coconuts. After about 4 months, he's lying on the beach one day when the most gorgeous woman he has ever seen rose up to the shore. In disbelief, he asked, "Where did you come from? How did you get here?" "When my cruise ship sank." And she replies, "I rowed over from the other side of the island where I landed when the cruise ship sank." "Amazing," he notes. "You were really lucky to have a rowboat wash up with you." "Oh, this thing," explains the woman, "I made the boat out of some raw material I found on the island. The oars were whittled from gum tree branches. I wove the bottom from palm tree branches, and the sides and stern came from an eucalyptus tree." "But where did you get the tools?" "Oh, that was no problem," replied the woman. "On the south side of the island, a very unusual stratum of alluvial rock is exposed. I found that if I fired it to a certain temperature in my kiln, which I made, it melted into detectable iron, and I used that to make tools and used the tools to make the hardware." The guy was absolutely stunned. She said, "Let's row over to my place and I'll give you a tour." So after a short time of rowing, she soon docks the boat at a small wharf. As the man looks to the shore, he nearly falls off the boat. Before him is a long stone walk leading to a cabin and a treehouse. While a woman ties up the rowboat with an expertly woven hemp rope, the man can only stare ahead, dumbstruck. As they walk into the house, she says casually, "It's not much, but I call it home. Please sit down." "Would you like a drink?" "No, thank you," the man blurts out, still dazed. "I can't take another drop of coconut juice." "Oh, it's not coconut juice," winks the woman. "I have a still. How would you like a tropical spitzer?" Trying to hide his continued amazement, the man accepts, and they sit down on a couch and talk. After they exchange their individual survival stories, the woman announces, "I'm going to slip into something more comfortable. Would you like to take a shower and a shave? There's a razor in the bathroom cabinet upstairs." No longer questioning anything, the man goes upstairs into the bathroom. There in the cabinet is a razor made from a piece of tortoise bone. 2 shells hung to a hollow ground edge are fastened to its inside a swivel mechanism. "This woman is amazing," he muses. "What's next?" When he returns, she greets him wearing nothing but some small flowers and tiny vines, each strategically positioned, and she smells faintly of gardenias. She beckons for him to sit down next to her. "Tell me," she begins suggestively, slithering closer to him. "We've both been here for many months. You must have been lonely. When was the last time you played around?" She stares into his eyes. He can't believe what he's hearing. "You mean," he swallows excitedly. Tears come to his eyes. "You built a golf course." We'll all stand and